day of policy workshop on decoding China. So you all must be curious to know as to what is China's defense strategy. What makes PLA so unique? So to answer these questions, we bring to you a workshop based on the theme Defense and Security, PRC and PLA, including China's defense capability. The aim of today's workshop is to enable and equip individuals who wish to enter the growing professional sphere of public policy, governance, leadership, and to specialize on issues related to China. So, to enlighten us today, our speaker is Colonel Hariharan. Sir is a retired officer of Intelligence Corps, Government of India, and has also worked as the head of Intelligence Training Section in MI Directorate in Army Headquarters. He has also been awarded with the Vishisht Seva Medal by the President of India in recognition of his service as the head of intelligence of Indian Peacekeeping Force in Sri Lanka. He is also a part of Deepan Educational Society for Health and is also the co-founder of Chennai Center for China Studies. His articles on strategic security issues have been published in almost all major newspapers and magazines. And over a dozen of his papers on security related issues in Sri Lanka and Myanmar, China, and terrorism have been included in loads of books. I mean, it's a great honor for us to host you, sir. So before I just hand it over to him, I would request all the participants to remain muted during the session. You will be given a chance at the end to unmute and ask your doubts. So if you please, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nitya. I hope I am audible to everybody.
Yes,
it is
sir.
a great pleasure to have so many people attending this thing on a Sunday in the afternoon between 2 and 3. This shows there is a lot of public interest in the subject. What I would have considered, say, 10 years back as a very dry subject. Because China doesn't excite many Indians as US excites, used to excite rather. But if you see Chinese history, China has got a recorded history from 2500 BC onwards till today. They're some of the earliest things, inventions in warfare took place. For instance, gunpowder, rocketry, grenades, bombs, flamethrowers, which all came up later, was evolved and refined in Western technology, was originally Chinese concepts. And Chinese, particularly metallurgy, they specialized the metallurgical methodology to evolve weapon grade metals like spearheads, spears, swords, and so on of the period. They were also the first to organize nomadic horsemen into cavalry. So, though the Confucius teaches us that they should follow a middle path between extremes, China successive governments, the royalty, and later the Qing dynasty was the last one in 1911. The modernization started taking place with the revolution, Republican Revolution, and so on. So we should not dismiss China out of the reckoning of the strategic concepts, because Chinese have evolved their own concepts. So let us see today how we go about it. You see, I haven't got a ready script, but I follow I've been teaching also in IIM on written assessment. I follow what is called the storyboard method. We will see the various headings, and pick up whatever is interest to us. Later in a question and answer session, we can discuss the issues. I am not going to cover all of this as a talk show. So it is a discussive, interactional presentation. Next one, please. You see, this is the Lowy Institute had what is called comprehensive power rating of the world's powers. According to it, it has got a scoring system. I have given at the bottom of the slide. That is, it is based on the economy, military, resilience of the society and the economy, future resources and economic relations with other countries, defense networks it has, diplomatic and cultural influence. This is how they have rated the top powers. There are only 2 superpowers according to the Lowy Institute comprehensive power rating. This is not military power. This is a nation as a whole. And US is in number 1 state level with 81.6 points. But it has come down since 2018, whereas China has not changed. China remains at 71. Above 71 point is considered a superpower. Japan is marginally on the edge of the major power. All others are middle powers. That is, India is in number 4 rating. India has also come down. 5 is Russia. It has also come down. Because of audience interest, before people ask me, I can show that Pakistan is number 15. You will be surprised. The middle powers within top 10, Singapore is rated as one of the powers. So it is not only military power that decides a nation's fate, but it is comprehensive power rating. Next one, please. Next slide, Devara. This is the GDP projections I have taken from the PricewaterhouseCoopers. They made a 50-year projection. I have taken Asian powers. Actually, Australia also is a middle power, just below Russia. And China, India, Japan, Philippines and Vietnam, there are other emerging powers. You can see how the GDP is figuring. India will be, according to this, India will be somewhere in 2050, will be somewhere 2/3 of China's. Whereas Japan, which China galloped past in the 20 years back, 2 decades back. Actually, when I visited China in, I think about 8-9 years back, when I visited China, my guide was telling their aim was to beat Japan economically as a superpower. So Japan has come down because competitively Japan has been surpassed. And next one, please. This is a broad contrast. I am taking the Indian model so that it is relevant, not the American model. I want to, since they are both Asian powers, they have very similar thousands of years of civilizational influence. I am taking this model. This I have rationalized from available data. I am familiar with Chinese history and fairly familiar with Indian history and current affairs. So I have taken the gist of it. If you see, as opposed to multi-party, multi-ethnic constitutional democracy, we can hear the cacophony even now of the elections in Tamil Nadu, just outside. China is a single party rule of the Communist Party from 49 onwards, 1949. China always had a problem of having a robust democracy. You see, India had a evolutionary democracy. China had warlordism, and it was just as India was in various empires, China also had various empires, various influences. But the great advantage China had was the written language was same. That is the present day Mandarin. Of course, it has been evolved. Whereas spoken one, it varies from dialect to dialect. The Cantonese in southeastern China will not be understood by the northern dialect, the guy who speaks dialect. But the moment he writes, they will understand. This is the advantage China has. But for a multi-party democracy, I think our model is good, having 23 or 24 languages. And they have a strong central government, which thinks for the whole country. But at the same time, China has a regional autonomy. That is, even for giving industrial permits, the state governments had full freedom. The net result was there was a huge pollution. So some curbs were introduced. Similarly, they had banks also, local banks. Of course, there was a party control everywhere, because to rise up in society and in politics and in your career, you have to be a member of the Communist Party. And world's largest economy, India, whereas China is number one economic power now. The other difference is we are a service and consumption based economy, whereas China is basically a manufacturing and export based growth. This model they adopted only after 20 years after cultural revolution, which damaged the country. Then came into power. Slowly, Deng Xiaoping unloosened the control state exercised over industrial investment, and it coincided with the desire for America to cut loose Sino-Chinese collusion. So in Nixon's period, you might remember, Kissinger engineered this, and Pakistan played a very important role in this affair, US-China. And then onwards, China took full advantage of American investments till Obama. I don't know whether you know, when Obama came to power, Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State. You know, first country she visited was China. Why? Because the US banking system was near collapse, and she wanted huge Chinese investment in US state bonds. That's why she went. So there was a lot of bonhomie built by US. We have to understand this to understand how the current changes are. And India is a dominant Asian power. some say it's a reluctant Asian power. I don't agree with this. It is not reluctance. India is burdened with a system of what you call changing governments and modifying its structures. That is our advantage as well as our disadvantage. So, whereas China is a UN Security Council member, we are an aspirant for Security Council membership. I don't think it will come easily because existing club of 5 members, they won't easily allow new members to come. Because when Security Council was formed, it had the genesis, the United Nations had the genesis in Second World War. So they did not want it to UN to collapse like League of Nations. So they adopted this, they what you call permanent members who have a veto. So China was admitted. Before that, it was the what you call the Republic of China, now called Taiwan. This was till 96. There was China and Taiwan were in conflict. That's a different history how it was resolved when America decided. So, but we have India has unique global soft power. It is a because there is a popular image of India. It has got multi-religious and anybody can take refuge. India is one of the few countries which is hosting the largest number of refugees who are not, India has not been a signatory, though it had accepted, it has not ratified UN Refugee Convention. US also has not done. Many countries have not done because they do not want to lose what is called sovereignty. So, but still at the same time, the way India treats refugees, it is beyond the norms specified by the UN Refugee Convention. Next one, please. Why PLA is different? We must understand if you look back in Chinese history, PLA is the other side of the coin of the Chinese Communist Party. It has the Chinese Communist Party. It started with they formed a commune and they came under the Soviet influence. The original Communist Party members is Jiangxi Commune, which the Chiang Kai-shek led Republican government continued to chase them out. That was to survive. The members took up arms and fought their way through the Great March. That is the time the PLA came into being. So it has got a huge historical association. So there is no really separation of the party and the what you call the armed forces. Imagine in India, if Congress Party or Communist Party had their own armies and run the government, how it would be? It would be the Chinese model. Even Soviets didn't have this Chinese model because historically the Soviet revolution came through the industrial workers. In China, it is based peasant basis, based on because it was not industrialized. So we must understand the historical association that had its own advantage and the disadvantage. The advantage is government writs is the same as army's writ. They all interchange chairs. Like President Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping is General Secretary Communist Party. First he was elected, then he became president, then he became chairman of the military commission, which controls the army. So these are the three limbs that support the government. Actually, the two limbs that support the government are support the Communist Party or the government and the PLA. This is a very important thing we should understand. So a senior guy will be a senior member of the decisions that take place. Whereas in a democracy, we do not have, I wonder, nowadays probably they have access. The service chiefs do not have access to the direct, uh, the, the prime minister. Whereas when the military commission meets, they will have the direct access, the PLA heads. And similarly, PLA has got over 200 members in their parliament called National People's Congress. That is National People's Congress. It is a huge body, over 1,200 members, and they have nearly one-sixth, if I remember correct, of the share in membership. Whereas here, if an army guy has to contest, he has to submit a resignation letter to the government and apply for, along with his application for contesting the election, he has to submit it to army headquarters. They will clear it and send him, and they will send him home. This is how we function as a true democracy. So it actually, Communist Party articulates, verbalizes the uh, what we call the ideology. This is very important. So directly, when the decision is taken by the party, it is translated into ground action. There is no time lost. And also it executes the policy. So there is a direct feedback system. And it considers itself as the defender of the core interests of what are the key core interests? That is a peaceful border, territorial integrity, cross-strait integrity, that is Taiwan and Hong Kong, and the cross-strait domination. These are some of the core interests. I am not repeating the cliche, communist cliche here, so that because everyone in the audience will understand. Next one, please. You see, there are various methods. I am displaying measuring military capability the RAND organization adopts. It has two sets. One is the strategic resources and how strategic resources are converted by the country. This is how they rate. You can see in that strategic resources, your budget, GDP, your uh, combat research and development and technology, manpower available at their education levels, defense and industrial basis of the country, and how many are available integral, and there is a military infrastructure apart from inventory and logistic support. Military infrastructure would be centers of training, the troop concentrations, and their instructional training establishments or any other special establishments. And how is its inventory? Modern armies require huge inventory. In Delhi, we have in Shakur Basti, the biggest, India's biggest warehouse of inventory of any kind. Even before the computerization was there were 1.5 crore items in the inventory. That is where the first IBM computer was established also. And how logistic support within the country is. For instance, in India, you have to move the troops from concentrations because all troops are not kept forward. Under Geneva Convention, you are not supposed to deploy your troops on the borderland. So, unless there is a security threat. Whereas the conversion capability is the how it is translated. For instance, we will take how threats and strategy are translated into action by carrying out assessments. Then how civil military relations, very important, access to national leadership. Sometimes you see there is in India, there is this disconnect between civil and military relations at the top level. That is how the Kargil thing happened, or 62 war took place. So access to military leadership in all governments, modern governments, has been reworked. In America also there is. We also have National Security Council. Various models have been tried. We can discuss it on some other day. Then foreign military to military relations is very important so that ideas can be converted into actionable learnings from other armies. This is, for instance, like you use what you call when initially what is called the UAVs were called, the drones were called pilotless planes. From there, it has come to now automatic. They can fire also. They can carry out operations from the sky. You can see it had the Armenia was defeated like this in Nagorno-Karabakh when Armenia tried to retain it by use of drones. Then there is a doctrine, military doctrine, and modern how you are up to date. Then capacity to innovate. War is never predicted. It can never be predicted. I have taken part in 65 war, 71 war, and many skirmishes. In Sri Lanka, 3 years I have taken part. So about 23 insurgencies I have handled in operations. So from my experience, it is what exactly Napoleon said. If you expect the enemy to hit you from 4 directions, he will hit you from the 5th one. It can never be predicted. So always you should be able to improvise. So capacity to innovate, and what are the constraints? Next one, please. I have taken Global Firepower Index. This is a publication. It makes power index for 140 countries. This is available in public domain. There is nothing secret about it. On 3rd, they had carried out, this is the latest, their Global Power Index of this year, 3rd March, that is last month. So according to it, you can see the global. I am taking India comparatively so that I can avoid, people will ask otherwise, where do we stand vis-a-vis Chinese capacity? That's why I'm saving time. You can see the 0. If you have global power index is 0, you are number 1. The highest power index is that. So China is 0.08 and India is number 4. Its advantage, the various, where does it stand in various ratings? It has got 50 factors. I have taken the general factor. That is roads Actually, we are number 6. Sorry, it is missing. Whereas railways, we are not bad. Ports, we are behind. Airports also, we are behind. But China is a very vast country. So China is also behind for its requirement as far as airports are concerned. Next one, please. You can see this. This is the army comparison. Every country has got, it has got to have population. It has much less population. It cannot sustain war. War is expensive. The traditional conventional war. The one of the reason for Japan's defeat was that active personnel, how many? So it is based on the population. That is young people. They are taken, and there is after serving a period. In India, it is 20 years. Different countries have different norms. Some send them to after 3 years training. We send them back. They become reserved. In case of war, they would be called up. In a 6-2 war, we called up the reserves to make up the deficiency. Then there is paramilitary. This is the looks after the borders. The paramilitary maintains peace, internal peace, and paramilitary. It should not be confused with police. Paramilitary has got, it is armed and trained. It will hold back the areas in times of operation so that when army can move forward, the paramilitary can take over the areas captured or the rear is kept safe. And then we will see these factors which make up an army. Tanks. Tanks. India and China have almost same, what do you call, the Russian model tanks. China has made its own, but it has not been able to, it has got a problem of engine manufacture. So the Chinese are a little behind us, but we have, our inventory is a mixed one, whereas theirs is of Soviet origin and Russian manufacture, Russian prototypes made in China. Now they are designing their own tanks, just as we have been designing our own. The armored vehicles are mechanized vehicles in which troops move. For modern warfare, it is not the trench operation of First World War. You move from place A to B very fast, okay? Because we operate in battle groups now, not the huge armies, because the battlefront is very modern. We will see it a little later. Then there is self-propelled artillery. I was artillery guy in 65 war. It is the guns are fixed; they are towed. Whereas the artillery, self-propelled artillery, that is called SP. It is mounted on a tank. And a rocket projectile, we are very weak. The actually, for the size of the army, we are deficient. We see we are only having 374. These are multi-barrel free rockets. They fire 48 rockets. China had a very bad experience when they fought against the Russians on the Amur River. China had a border dispute. They fought, I think, in 76, if I remember correct. And the Russians launched the Soviets then. They launched 2 divisions of multi-barrel rockets. Each unit fires 48 rockets. A battery will have about, say, 6 to 10 units. So 480 raining on the troops. Chinese were decimated. After that, they went in for multi-barrel rocket. The Russia is a pioneer in this. During Second World War also, the Germans were destroyed by free rocket use. These are area weapons. Russian artillery, Stalin himself was an artilleryman. So our strategy also is based on using artillery divisions. China also similar. There are a lot of similarity. Next one, please. This is the Navy. I have gone by the what is called order of seniority. Between the three services, Army is the oldest. In UK, it is Navy is the oldest. Whereas here in Army is the oldest. Then is Navy, then Air Force. So what are the total assets? These are total what you call the units that float. You can call it ships in layman's language. So you can see where we are. China is number one. It has just surpassed US holdings. We have one aircraft carrier. I'm sorry, I apologize. There is an error. China has two. It has come as 2130. China has only two aircraft carrier. Then helicopter carriers. This is a concept Japanese, French, and all follow. Our tactically, we do not follow this, both India and China. So we don't have helicopter carriers. Our ships, battleships carry helicopters, warships. We have destroyers, 10. The Chinese have 50 frigates. These are all, the destroyers are much bigger ones. They are slowly going out of fashion ever since missiles have come. So there are more and more frigates are used. Similarly, corvette is even high speed. Hull is designed differently. High speed, they can reach, they can provide protection. They carry, all of them carry missiles. Submarine, our weakest spot, that is the strongest in China, because China did not have fleet operation experience. I don't know whether you are, China was actually during the Opium War, they could not face that is, Qing dynasty could not face the Western warships. So China never developed a navy. So they pulled back. That is why the coastal area was colonized by the Westerners. So China's defensive mentality prevailed. They developed their submarines to destroy anybody entering there. That is the South China Sea, which was hemmed in by Americans. You see, America, Japan, Philippines, South Korea, they have the alliance and all the gaps between to enter outside South China Sea into Western Pacific is bottled up. That is why China is claiming they are creating the islands. That's another day. Then China is particularly, they have got what is called the Tri-H. They have got SRBMs, submarine launched ballistic missiles, whereas we do not have. We have submarine launched nuclear powered submarines. We have two. We are building another third one. We do not have. Unless you have this, the submarine launched ballistic missile, that gives you a nuclear capacity to fire from anywhere. We do not have that capacity. We have to fire it from a platform, other platform, we may be destroyed. The petrol vessels, India has got more. India uses very imaginatively. You might remember the Karachi port was destroyed. The naval base was destroyed by petrol boats, our petrol boats, in 71 war. And we do not have mine warfare. Mine warfare is using mines. You mine your port's entry so that you channelize the enemy into a proper channel and destroy. Next one, please. This is the aircraft. I am not going into detail, otherwise I may well run out of time. But you should not estimate just look up by the numbers. Neither India nor China has got a wholly modern aircraft fleet. China is improving. India is now with the induction of Rafale, and India is, they are very similar. They are using Sukhoi 30 various versions. China is the older version, and aircraft China has fighter aircraft China has given to Pakistan is inferior to our Tejas in various capacity. But we have fewer squadrons for our requirements. Now, I will not go into detail. Important weakness of Chinese is the tanker fleet. Why tanker fleet is important? You can go on long range mission. Now in Indo-Pacific, if a fighter is launched from China, it has to have, it requires a tanker fleet to fuel it. We also have deficiency. 6 is not sufficient. But we have, we are leasing from United Arab Emirates. We have a strategic security agreement with them. They fueled also refueled our Rafales when they were coming. So we are trying to overcome. Helicopter also we have deficiency. And you can see the attack helicopters. They are improvised and they are using Soviet models. We have just got now these American helicopters, and we have indigenous ability. We have not invested the money for this offensive weapon. In modern day warfare, you require attack helicopters. You will be amazed if you travel in one. I saw one when it carried out an attack. I was traveling along with the pilot. It's an amazing experience. Next one, please. But the next warfare is not going to be like Second World War or Vietnam War. It is going to be hybrid warfare. It is going to involve all of us, even those sitting happily in IIT, looking at the computers. They would be involved in the war, wittingly or unwittingly, because at some level, all countries are carrying out warfare. We are carrying out now a warfare against coronavirus. See how much politics, international politics is there in the corona vaccination, how much heat it has generated in China-US relations. So this is actually, there is a Cold War 2.0 on now. It is, we don't know who is the friend or foe. I am not going to go into this. I am sure anybody, they can write to me. I will say, there is nothing, I don't have any copyright on this. You are almost free to get it from Bala from Chennai Center for China Studies. Next one, please. We will discuss how it applies. This is how it is applied. This, it is an integrated, Pakistan actually is using a type of irregular warfare. combined with regular threat and multiple domains. Diplomatic Pakistan, because it has no other choice, it is doing that. It is the hybrid warfare of the 21st century. That is why Americans could not defeat the Vietnam, cannot, after spending so much time and energy and money, over 2,500 chaps have died in Afghanistan. America has not won the war in Afghanistan because it is a hybrid warfare. There is no declaration of war. So, according to Geneva Convention, you declare war, a state of war is declared. Nobody has, except he made a speech after 9/11. Uh, George Bush Jr. He says this is the global anti-terror war. That is all. And there is a lot of deception and shock effect. And I need not tell about cyber warfare. Some of you will be taking up these jobs, which are going to bloom. It is in not only for warfare. Cyber warfare is across a financial domain, industrial domain, manufacturing domain, governments, everywhere. Cyber warfare is the biggest threat. It can disable stock exchange. It can disable troops. Now, the informatization and modernization is the command and control, integrated command and control using dedicated satellites for military use. I fought wars with our exchange, guy laying cable, and I was using HF6, high frequency. Now the guy doesn't use, he is using satellite technology. In our days, we were using manually, we were plotting the met conditions, how weather will affect the trajectory of the artillery and will affect hitting the targets. We had graphs, we had guys working on it manually. Now it is totally computerized. Weather data comes from weather satellite. It is fed and theater wise, you are told it is given on a platter. Automatically, guns are moved, guns are laid, and it fires on the target. The whole thing is getting what they call the President Xi Jinping calls informatized warfare. This is the weakness of both India and China. Are we ready for informatized warfare scenario? No country can say they are ready, because if the enemy is not informatized, if he doesn't use a mobile phone, how will you find out? How will you carry out a warfare against him? If he doesn't use internet communication, he goes back to the primitive methods. That is how the Taliban is succeeding, or the terrorists. You could see few guys getting together, carrying out in Sri Lanka such a big explosion. 250 people killed in the church when they attacked 2, 3 churches. So it is not the hybrid warfare is okay, but it is not going to solve every problem. So you have frequent operation spells. Somewhere else it will sprout. I will tell you what has happened to the Islamic State, which was the talk of the day. War in Syria. War in Syria, they said, is won. Islamic State is destroyed. Now it has sprouted in, of all places, Mozambique, in East Africa, Southeast Africa, because Mozambique has got oil resources and these guys have come, infiltrated, converted the local Muslims, and they are carrying out. It is emerging as a very big threat. They are already in Somalia, in Mali, that is the bordering of the West Africa, what do you call the Francophone countries. in Central and West Africa, where there are Muslim concentrations. So this is how so troops have to be mobile, fast, agile, operating against them. So how will next one, please? My time is running out. What are our strategic strengths? I am not going to read out the whole thing. Well, our advantage is we have very good airlift capability because we have got the American Hercules family aircraft, and we have got very good strategic reconnaissance capability, much better than the Chinese, because we have got this Orion family of reconnaissance, long-range reconnaissance aircraft, which can carry out surveillance and also control vacuum. We have, of course, shorter logistic lines compared with China. Imagine China, it is occupying two-thirds of Asia. It's about 5 times bigger than India. So it is going to be very difficult. We have, of course, strategic synergy with Quad and Russia. And also we have treaty agreement with France also. France is, you will be surprised, it's a major Indian Ocean power. It has got the largest economic zone because France has got what is called metropolitan territory in Indian Ocean, islands of Reunion and a few others. So we have an agreement with them also. We can use their facility. And we have agreement with Mauritius, Sri Lanka, and so on, Maldives. But China has one big advantage, strategic strength is the single party rule. So what is Xi Jinping gives, it stays. Here immediately there will be a democratic noise. And China has strategic, UN influence because it is veto holding. Next one, please. You can see this, I'm not repeating. The PLA man-to-man is actually not very tested. The People's Liberation Army, I will give you one example, the modern. It is now contributing soldiers to the UN peacekeeping force. So our General J.J. Singh, when he served in Africa as one of the commanders of a brigade, it had a Pakistani battalion, it had an Indian battalion, and a Chinese battalion under him. So, whereas they implicitly, Indian and Pakistani troops will carry out orders. Chinese were really scared of going out and operating against unknown insurgents. So, what Xi Jinping is trying to do is to change this mindset of that is the reason why India could in Galwan operation. You might remember, India could silently occupy. Imagine at 14,000 feet, 15,000 feet, a silent operation in the night. Without firing, you occupy a ridge under the nose of the enemy. It is no mean feat. You have to see the terrain. Whereas Chinese were surprised. In spite of all surveillance, battlefield surveillance. But India's biggest problem and China's biggest advantage is the China's strategic alliance with Pakistan. That's our disadvantage. And other is the naval operation. We have been operating an aircraft carrier for 50 years. Yeah, operating an aircraft carrier is no mean thing. I don't know how many of you have been to an aircraft carrier. Even on a helicopter, I have landed during operation on a normal frigate. It is so nerve-wracking because the ship is listing up and down, left and right, and the helicopter is coming and landing. It is, you will be scared. Whereas a fighter takes off from the deck, it lands, it maintains, the data is passed from the control tower to control the operation and comes back and lands. It is not just by having a aircraft carrier. You will not know unless you own your operation. Aircraft carrier is a invitation for disaster unless you protect it. It is a very costly asset on the sea. It has to be protected, at least 5, 6 ships. So you have to have fleet operation, how they will protect. So this experience, China, that is why China has not come out of South China Sea. We don't see the aircraft carrier operation. Whereas we are carrying out exercise with Americans. Tomorrow there is another one starting with France. France, Australia, all are joining mainly. Australia also operates aircraft carrier. Japan also one of the pioneers in aircraft carrier manufacture. During Second World War, Japan had self-defense force operates helicopter carriers, which can be at a pinch converted because Japan's battlefield requirement is different, shorter range. It is operating helicopter carriers which will carry missiles and use. And our poor border infrastructure is being sorted out now, thanks to Modi ji, and thanks to Xi Jinping, who gave as a good nasty surprise. We are doing it. Our other problem is poor national strategic management. This has to have as a cultural thing. Whereas in Chinese now, the what do you call the top echelon, all are technology qualified. In all, they are all engineers or technically qualified. They can grasp. Now, I don't want to make political comments. I don't know how many of our any party. I keep telling them out. I come on TV panel discussions. I tell political parties, why don't you put a strategic knowledge as one of the requirements for members? We don't have. So here we have our potential partners are far apart. China has few partners, but biggest partner China's is Russia, North Korea. These are two very important partners. Now Iran is signing, but Iran is a friend of India also. It is not an enemy. Next one, please, Bala. I know Bala is getting impatient. Now, if anybody has any question, Bala, is there time for questions?
Thank you, sir.
I should say, Nitya.
Yes, sir.
Time for
Thank you so
question.
much. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It was a really enlightening session. So before we begin with the questions, there's something I'd like to announce. It is expected from the participants to submit articles or briefs related to this topic to C3S. The insightful articles will be released from the C3S website, and those participants will be awarded with certificates, free membership to Young Minds of C3S, and also an opportunity to apply for internships at C3S. And the details regarding the same shall be mailed to the registered participants. Okay, so now let's just move on to the questions part. So, sir, there's a question. Can't a country hide its military strength? If it can do so, how are these data obtained exactly?
Pardon, I didn't get the question.
Sure, sir. So, can't a country hide its military strength? If it can, how are these data obtained?
Actually, you in the present era, you cannot. Bala, you can close this visual, what to call the presentation, Bala, so that we can see. You see, uh, in this 21st century, you cannot really hide. What the Russians had done, because of Russians had told me also that the operational order which is transmitted uh, was different from the actual order. They will call the guy and tell him and pass on one, mislead the audience. Sorry, mislead the guys who are listening on the wireless staff. But now modern technology has surpassed that. It is real-time battlefield communication. So it's not necessary that I keep A, B, C, the three formations in hidden form. I the intelligence guys are very smart. We are collecting data and analyzing all time. Your budget is analyzed. We know how much Pakistan has to raise a division. I am giving an example. Raise a division, how much money is required, and how budget is apportioned, and where are they hidden? They are hidden in under various heads. They will say refugee welfare or this thing. So over a time, by studying, this is a fine art has been developed, and you have system of informers who. That is why they interact with foreign military attaches and diplomats. They interact with their journalists, with the political party leaders and all. So they evolve specialization. It's very difficult to hide, but still people will hide. You remember Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam? He could hide the nuclear explosion when it was imminent. Everybody, Americans knew it was imminent, but nobody knew it had taken place when it actually took place. So, for every thing, every challenge, I mean, there is no set rule. That is why I said innovation is a great asset. Chinese are very good at it. You can see even the Chinese fraudsters, they are coming and making money in India. Why doesn't our guys go and make money in China? Because they are smart, they are innovative. All this loan business, you remember. So in only the time interval is getting short for you to react. But all the time somebody is listening, somebody is collating the data, somebody is asking, producing your contradiction. That's my answer.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, the next question is, what can India and Bangladesh do to stop China from occupying the Chittagong port?
Chittagong is not occupied. I am sorry. They are contractors, they are building, they are giving aid. We are also giving aid to Bangladesh. We are also developing ports. We are developing communication. For heaven's sake, just because the I remember when I met the President Mind of Rajapaksa, then I had gone for a seminar at his invitation. So he asked me, Colonel, why is India objecting? We buy telephone technology from China. Your BSNL is using only telephone. Same company is supplying to BSNL. So it is like that. You follow. It doesn't make the China is. China is not an enemy. So this year, 2020, our China topped our trade. You know, I don't know whether you know. It has topped our trade, India's trade, under adverse condition of COVID, all this heat. China is the number one economic power. You can't wish away. So China is here to stay in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, and that doesn't mean you run away. You should devise methods how to overcome. I don't know, on some other occasion I will speak about the Sagar initiative, what the government has taken the initiative on Indian Ocean countries. So we are not sleeping. We are taking initiative. Bangladesh, we have problems with Bangladesh. All countries have problems with each other. So China also has problems with Bangladesh. They had supplied inferior submarines. Bangladesh wanted to return them. Chinese refused. That it has become junk, very costly submarine. So it is not all, everything is tickety boo for China. It's not a cakewalk, even in Pakistan.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. So that was it. And we're done with the questions. So I'd like to thank you again for such a thought-provoking session. I mean, all of us surely had a great time listening to you. Thanks a lot, sir.